Hello and welcome to 1000 Actually Fun Books Everyone Should Read. And I want to start out by saying that my goal in this series of videos has been to assemble a book list that's 1,000 books long that are actually fun books. And that should be pretty obvious on what this channel is all about. Well, I tentatively have a list, but the majority of them I haven't read. And I didn't want to create a list and say, everybody, these are 1,000 fantastic books, when I can't actually back that up by not having actually read the book. So some of the books that I think are on the list are going to end up being ones that I'm like, oh, that's actually bloody awful. Why did I think that would be on that list? That's ridiculous. It shouldn't be on the list. So this week's book that I'm reviewing that's a lead up to Danielle Steele's The Ball at Versailles. And this book is garbage. Oh yes, I am going to say this was absolutely awful. I'm sorry, there are a ton of people who absolutely love this woman's writing. And I have no idea why. I was shocked at how much I hated this book. So I started in and I got about 20 pages in. That's about one chapter. And if I hadn't been doing a review for this website, or this channel, I would have taken it back to the library. Having read it, I was reading one for the first chapter and I'm like, no, I need to give this more time. It's probably just, it's an introduction. It's going to get better. It didn't. It really didn't. I got through, we'll just say, the climax of the story. I forced myself to read almost to the end, but about 50 pages before the end, I just threw my hands up in the air and said, it's not getting better, and I skimmed through the last little bit. And so, let me tell you a little bit about this book. But as you can already tell, big spoilers here, I hated it. I was not expecting to really hate it as much as I did. But I'll tell you why, and why this does not make my list of 1,000 good books. So I'm going to end up having categories, which, I wasn't expecting to be able to do this right at the beginning, but I was going to have books that I review that I'm like, yes, this is part of my 1,000 books that are really good. And then books that I end up reading in, like the first book I read, which was A Murder is Announced. And they're just like, that's okay. I mean, I liked it, but it doesn't make the best of. And then they'll end up being books like this one that are just too horrible. I would never recommend it to anybody. Like if somebody came up to me and said, do you recommend this book? If it was Mistborn, I'd be like, yes, I recommend that book. Read it. It was great. If it was Murder is Announced, I'd be like, yeah, it was pretty good. Go for it. You might enjoy it. If it was this book, I'd say, no, you can find something better. I could recommend better books than that. That was pretty bad. Okay, I am going to tell you ahead of time, there's going to be spoilers in this. If you haven't read the book and you want to read the book, I'm not going to say don't, but if you don't want to be spoiled, stop now, go read the book. You can come back to this video later and tell me your opinion about this book. Because I guess I'm in the minority. If you look at Amazon on the reviews for this book, A Ball at Versailles, you will find that it's over 7,000 reviews and it's got a rating of 4.5 stars on Amazon. And that's really high. So I expected this to be much better than it was. Yes, this was quite disappointing. Okay, so let's start with just a brief summary. The book, the whole idea is you have a debutante ball at Versailles in France, and a handful of Americans, ladies between the ages of like 17 and 18, 19 maybe, have been invited. It's a huge honor, sort of. And four of them, the book centers around four of them who accept and go to the ball in France. And the idea is kind of interesting. Amazon calls this a contemporary fiction, and so I was expecting it to be more modern. I was expecting like the 1990s or something, but this is actually set in the 1950s. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe the author just didn't want to deal with cell phones. I don't know. But so I wasn't expecting that, but that's fine. No big deal. The book centers around 4/5 people, and I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. In the end, the ladies go to the ball, and some of them find true love, sort of, I guess, and live happily ever after. It's kind of it is a romance. I wouldn't say the romance is very heavy in this, because you don't have any relationship building. I mean, they don't meet any of the men. None of the men are introduced really until, halfway through, maybe 3/4 of the way through the book. And you get brief scenes with them. And then, of course, they declare true love and, live happily ever after and have sex and, life is good, I guess. But let me get to what I liked about this book. And now let me get to, I will say that it was really hard for me to find anything nice to say about the book. It really was. So of your 4.5, we'll say 5 main characters, 2 of the ladies I did like. There is very superficial. You don't get to know any of the characters very well. Maybe that's because there were so many of the characters, because you had 4 main characters plus a 5th one. And so because of that, the author was stretched too thin on the amount of space she had to work with. And so you just got a really weirdly superficial way of introducing these characters. And that's possible. So 2 of them, superficially, I liked. I started to like them less after the ball, because I thought they made poor decisions. But up until that point, 2 of them I liked. 2 of them, one of them it was kind of weird. I'll get to that in a minute. And one of the characters was a nothing. Like, you didn't know anything about this character, even though she was supposedly a main character. You don't get to know her at all. She's a nothing character. And then the 4th one I actively disliked. There's like nothing positive about this character. Which was, again, this is weird. The 1/4 of the book would be about this character that she really doesn't have any positive qualities. She doesn't make any positive decision making. Okay, so my good thing is there were 2 characters I sort of liked. And it did have a happy ending. I mean, you kind of expect that in a romance. But that was it. Yeah, there's nothing else good to say about it. Okay, so things I didn't like. So I've already said that some of the characters I just plain didn't like. I will say, all right, let me talk about the writing style first, okay? I was so frustrated with this author's writing. I am hoping that she was just being a lazy writer, because this is, she's a famous author and she doesn't have to put any effort into it and can make oodles of money, rather than she actually doesn't know how to write well, because that would be really sad. But let's say, if anybody knows anything about writing, now I am not a literary critic. I had like 1 creative writing class back in college. I mean, that's the extent of my writing knowledge, right? But even I know that you're supposed to show people about things, not tell them. This author apparently doesn't know that. There is no showing. It's all telling. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. We'll do so on, sure, let's just do page 8. Randomly saying, this is describing some of the characters. So, she found a job as a junior editor at a well-known publishing house, similar to Alfred's job when she married him. This is the mother of one of the people. She found she had a talent for editing, and young writers liked working with her, and she enjoyed encouraging them. Okay, now notice what you just read. What I just read there. It is you are told what she is like. You are not shown what she is like. She has a talent for editing, but you never see this. You never see her actively using this. Young writers liked working with her. This is told to you, but she is never in the story interacts with a young writer. So you never see that actively happening. So this is her writing style. She will blurt out that the author will just tell you a characteristic, this is what this person is, and that's it. Always. Never does she go about showing how these people are. And this can be frustrating because it's not just in describing your characters. I mean, she did this throughout the entire book, but it's also emotions too, how somebody's reacting. You never get in somebody's head and feel along with them what they're feeling. Instead, it's like, that person over there is anxious. She just tells you, he's anxious. You don't get the, see the heart, you feel the heart pounding, feel the sweat, feel the nervous shivers. I mean, none of that. It's just, that person over there is anxious. She just tells you. To me, this is crap writing. This is horrible writing. I'll give you another example. On page 84, I just got to turn there. Okay. So this is talking about a different girl. It says, she hadn't made any friends with any of the girls at university so far. She and her roommate hardly saw each other and had different classes and schedules and no common interests. The only students she really talked to were boys in the class when they had labs, and none of them had asked her out. Now again, this is a telling, not showing. If you could imagine a better writer writing something the same way, they would have had, whether it's a present scene of her at the university or even a flashback to the past, where you see her walk into her dorm room, and there is her dorm mate over there. And she kind of awkwardly says, so, how was your day? And her roommate turns to her and said, oh, I went to the Bulls game. And you see her thinking, in her head, oh, is that a football team? I'm not even sure. Oh, that's nice, she replies. And then they sit there in awkward silence and then move about their day. Okay, that took a couple of sentences, but this shows you how awkward, where they had no common interests. The author doesn't bother to do that. Instead, it just goes out and tells you they had no common interests. That's nice. Move on. This is just, it was, to me, reading this, I was just appalled at how bad the writing was. It was just so bad. I have read fan fiction better than this. So the author never shows, she just tells all the time. Okay, so that's one thing I hated about this book, is always throughout the entire book, I never was actually immersed in the story because it felt like reading an obituary in a newspaper. So-and-so had a house in Aspen, and they liked skiing, and they had another house over there, and this was their job. How nice. I don't care. I mean, this doesn't tell me, I never got a feel for the characters. I never ended up being them or being beside them or present in the scene. She does a little bit better with the dialogue, but not much. And you don't get the description, again, of the emotion, the impact. Like, the character is devastated for something, and the author just comes out and said, she was devastated. This is, again, it's just such poor writing. So I was unimpressed with her writing ability. Okay, so that's just the writing. The characters. Okay, so I said that there were some that I liked. Okay, one of the four girls, let me go through them. Girl number one is the nothing girl. When you start out the book, it's from her mother's point of view. And almost always, dealing with girl number one, you get it from the mother's point of view. It's always all about the mother and what's going on in her life. That's why I said there's actually 5 characters, because the 5th one is the mother. And the first scene, the first chapter, where it's all about the mother and the daughter, I mean, again, they do the horrible description of they were great friends, but you never actually see it. But I was reading this kind of going, this is odd. I mean, I wouldn't expect the mother to be a main character, but, it's the first chapter, whatever. Well, the next scene, because they alternate, which of the girls' scene it is, comes back to the mother, and the girl isn't there at all, has nothing to do with her. So by the second scene with this lady, I'm like, oh, it's not about the girl, it's about the mother. She's obviously going to get a love interest in this book. Okay, fine. It'll be the 4 girls plus the mom, and it did end up being that way. But I'm like, that's weird. So the girl that this mom is supposed to be part of, the main character, she never really gets a scene that's about her. She does end up with one of the love interests at the end, but she has no personality. She is a blank slate nobody that ends up with a guy in the end. You're like, okay, whoopee. But okay. So girl number two. Girl number two was one of the ones I liked. Now she had more description, more personality, I guess. She was a misfit in her family, too smart, too ugly, kind of thing. Just her family didn't fit in. Now it was very stereotyped for her family. Like she had a rotten sister that was mean to her all the time, very one-dimensional, bad guy kind of character. But her character, the girl, I did end up kind of liking her. Girl number 3 was the one I detested. So this girl had nothing good about her in the whole story. So let me tell you her character arc. Again, this is spoilers. So you are introduced to her sneaking away without her parents' knowledge to fall into the bed of a guy 10 years her senior. So she's an 18-year-old in bed with, an older guy. And as soon as this happens, you're like, oh, guess what? He is totally going to be a jerk and cheat on her. I mean, you knew that immediately. So you're like, okay, first thing, she's being very stupid, okay? An 18-year-old sneaking out to fall into bed with some guy that her parents don't even know about is not an intelligent character. The next thing we hear from her is that she's failing all her classes at school because she's spending so much time in the bed of this guy. Okay, now I know she's a moron too. The next thing you find out is the guy has in fact been cheating on her and cruelly dumps her. Again, he's a very one-dimensional character. You don't get any emotional depth to this. He dumped her, totally expected. She is devastated, so all you get is the next scene of her in a week of, oh, woe is me, my life is over, I'm totally depressed and crying, and I'm sitting there going, I have no empathy for her. I mean, not only was it totally predictable as a story arc, but I don't care about this character yet. So, okay, she's a moron, she's still a moron. Then we find out that she's pregnant. And her excuse for this, on why she didn't use a protection, she flat out says this, I thought love would be my protection. And you're like, she is an absolute idiot. I cannot believe she's so much of an idiot. Okay, she thought love would be her protection. All right, whatever. Now her character arc ends with, she's thinking about getting an abortion because apparently a baby is too inconvenient for her. So, she's a really compassionate person. And, but she gets a miscarriage, ends up in the hospital, and her happy ending is basically that she gets over the guy. So she doesn't end up with a love interest, which is fine. Not everyone needs a love interest, but her whole character arc was basically getting over an idiot relationship that I didn't care about. I mean, there's nothing about this character that I'm like, oh, wow, I feel sorry for her. Even the miscarriage, I kind of felt like, that's life. I just didn't care about this character. And again, you didn't get that emotional resonance. If I had really been invested in this character, this traumatic experience would have been something that maybe a tearjerker or tug on my heartstrings or something. But because I had such a superficial and negative impression about this girl, I was just kind of like, I'm sorry, okay, whatever. And she survives. Okay, good for her. And that's how I felt about it. Okay, girl number 4. This was another one that I liked. So she had probably the most in-depth backstory, and a sympathetic character. Again, they're all very, very superficial. That you're like, she's a nice girl, and that's pretty much her character. She's a nice girl. And then finally you have the mom. So the mom is not one I really liked either. Not as bad as the moron who was sleeping with somebody who was obviously going to dump her, but the choices that she made in life, I just was like, why would you do that? So her daughter is an adult and off in college. Mom is single mom supporting her. and mom loses her job. Very sad. And she's worried about money. So here's what you have. You have the scenario of mom loses her job. Daughter did not actually really want to go to Versailles, all the way over to Paris to a ball she was like whatever about. She didn't really care about it. She's more focused on college. Mom was the one pushing, oh no, you've got to go. You'll love it. Go. It'll be a party. You know, it'll make great memories, and maybe you'll get a husband. And so she is now really worried about money, and she makes it a huge priority, like sells her jewelry and kind of things, you know, the last thing she has to live on, to send her and her daughter to Paris, to pay for the plane tickets and the hotel and the beautiful dresses and extra vacation days. And I'm sitting there going, why would you do that? Save up money so you can live. Your daughter didn't even really want to go. You were the one that was pushing it. Why would anybody do something like that? That's stupid. It's completely moronic. So the mom, I ended up feeling like was an idiot. At least in the choices that she made. I mean, it just didn't make logical sense that she was pushing this. If this was like the 1800s, if this book had been set in a different era, an era where all women were expected to get a husband in order to survive, like that was the way that they were secure in life, then I would have actually had this a lot more grace. I would have said, absolutely, she would do everything she could to secure her daughter's future. But in the 1950s, with her daughter in college, it didn't actually make any sense for her character to be like, no, we must go to a party that you're going to meet somebody for one day and totally fall in love and have a future wealthy spouse. That was kind of stupid. So the whole character arc for some of these characters were just so bad. Like I said, it was just horrible. So the romance part of it. Actually I'm going to back up there. The story arc, the way you get, you introduce the characters and the problem, and you go up and you get the rising action and climax, and then the descending action, right, at the very end. The writing in this was a little bit weird, because the climax of the story happened about 100 pages before the end of the book. It was the ball. And the true love's kiss for several of the people. And then you had, I was looking at it going, okay, we've reached the climax of the story. Now you could have a little bit of ending. I mean, a couple of the characters didn't get the guy at the end, and you could want to resolve that, like the person that had the miscarriage. I mean, what's going to happen with her? Sure, you got some resolving, but 100 pages? What are they going to do at the end? So it felt like that she spent 100 pages. Oh wait, we've got to get the sex scenes in there. Okay, these people just declared their love after a single day of chatting, so obviously they immediately need to go into bed together, and that will make things even better. I mean, a couple of these people at the ball were like, I will marry you, we're perfect for each other, and again, maybe I'm just cynical, but I'm sitting there going, this is so bad. Again, if they had had some build up to relationship, I have read good romances, but this was not it. A good romance should, you should have the characters actually interact, not have a conversation where the author doesn't even give you the conversation. In this story, it wasn't like you sit there and watch them chat and get to know each other. Instead, it's more like the author says something like, and they spoke for a couple of hours, and then the day was over. I mean, that's all you get from these characters. You don't get any of that emotional buildup of, wow, they're really, good for each other and they really fit together. No, there's none of that. They just magically, I guess, off-screen fall in love somehow that we are not aware of, and then they have true love's kiss and then fall in bed. And then we have page after page after page, but I didn't even bother reading by that point, because I'm like, I'm done with this. This is just such garbage. So, as you can tell, I was not impressed. So much so, that is very much an understatement. Okay, so that is The Ball at Versailles. I will probably not read another book by this author anytime the next decade. This was my first experience with her, and it totally turned me off. It's possible that 10 years down the road, if I'm still doing this list, which I intend to, but if I'm still doing this list, I'd be willing to branch out and attempt another one of her books, maybe one of her early books that got her on the scene, something that only focuses on like 2 characters where she can maybe build up a relationship or something that maybe is more in her wheelhouse than a whole bunch of characters that, yeah, that was bad. Okay, so that's end part 1. Part 2 of my videos are on what is coming next. And I'll be quite honest, I intended to do a Western. But now after 3 books, I only have 1 book on my, absolutely going to be on my list. And I'm kind of disappointed at that. So I was like, do I really want to attempt a new genre, the new author that may not end up being on the list? And like after this book that kind of scared me off on that. So I'm like, let me put it off another book. I won't do a Western next. Instead, I was like looking at my bookshelves going, okay, what could I pick that I know I like, that I could do next, that I'm sure is going to be on the list because I've read it before, that doesn't feel too similar to Mistborn, because I didn't want it, because that's part of the reason that I was doing it with a Western, because I'm like, this will be very different. We want different genres next to each other, not all the same thing. I don't want it to all feel the same. And I am gonna, by the way, this just because I didn't like that Ball at Versailles does not mean I am done with romances, because I know there are good romances out there. I just need to find a better one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a book that's very different. We're going to do, can you read that? Bambi. So this is probably a young adult. I'm not sure what genre this would be in besides just general literature. I don't think it's not an adventure story. It's certainly not really fantasy, although it's kind of, because you have the viewpoint of animals that, but it's actually a very realistic view of animals. If you've ever seen the movie, which I assume most of you have, it's got enough different in there that it's well worth reading. So I'm going to read this again. So even though there are some books on my list that I've read before, any book that I bring up and say, this will be the next book that I review, I'm going to reread before I do an actual review of it. And I haven't read this since I was in high school or something. You can kind of tell this book is in pretty bad shape. It's pretty old. But I've had it on my shelf for a while, and I remember liking this book. Like, I didn't particularly like the movie Bambi, but I liked the book. It has kind of a different feel to it. It's less comedic, like it doesn't have as much comedy as Bambi does in the movie, but it has a little bit more weight to it. Like, you really ended up liking the characters. At least that's how I remember it. So my next book is going to be Bambi. I am very confident that it is going to end up being on the list, that I'm going to read it again and go, wow, I liked that. It was good. And I will review it with a lot more detail next time. So if you are reading along with me, that'll be the next book. Please pick it up and enjoy it, because I think you will like it. And then after that, I think I will be willing to attempt a Western. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.